Anansi and Nyame, the sky god. Hello children, today we have a nice story about Kweku Anansi, the mischievous spider who is up to his old tricks again. Long ago, before stories were told, before fireside tales echoed across the villages, before laughter and wisdom danced in the same breath, the world was silent. People worked, hunted, loved, and died, but there were no stories, no lessons wrapped in words, no joy to pass the night. Because in those old days, all stories belonged to Nyame, the great sky god. He kept them locked away in a golden chest among the clouds, stories of heroes, of fools, of gods and beasts, and mortals could only look up and wonder. Down below, in the shade of the forest, lived Kweku Anansi, small, clever, and endlessly curious. He was not quite a man, not quite a spider, but both. 8 legs for weaving, 2 hands for scheming, and 1 very big mouth for boasting. One hot afternoon, Anansi sat with the elders beneath a baobab tree. The old men spoke of Nyame's treasures, of the golden chest that held all wisdom. Anansi puffed up his chest. What's the use of stories if no one can hear them? I, Kweku Anansi, will bring them down. The elders burst into laughter. You? A spider? One chuckled. The sky god would swat you like a fly. Anansi only grinned. We shall see. That night, as the moon rose, he spun a long silver thread and climbed towards the stars. Nyame's palace shimmered in the clouds. The sky god sat on a throne of lightning and gold, his voice deep as thunder. Who dares disturb my peace? He boomed. Anansi bowed low. It is I, great Nyame, humble Anansi of the earth. What do you want, little spider? I have come, said Anansi, to buy your stories. The sky god's laughter rolled like thunder across the heavens. Buy my stories? You? You could not afford even a single word. Try me, said Anansi, bold as ever. Nyame's eyes glowed. Very well. My price is high. Bring me Onini the python, Osibo the leopard, and the Muetia the invisible fairy. Do this, and the stories will be yours. The challenge echoed through the sky. Anansi bowed. Done. And with that he descended, thread glinting in the moonlight. Back in the forest, Anansi found his wife, Aso, wise and patient. He told her of the sky god's challenge. Aso smiled knowingly. The python is proud. He believes he is the longest creature in the world. Use that pride. Anansi grinned. I see. He cut a long palm branch and set off for the river where Onini lived. There the python lay coiled among the reeds, his golden eyes half closed. Ah, Onini, called Anansi, pretending to argue with himself. My wife says you are not as long as the palm branch. I say you are. We must settle this. The python hissed. Of course I am longer. Bring your branch. Anansi laid it beside him. Perhaps you should stretch out straight so I can see. Onini uncoiled lazily and stretched. There, longer. Ah, but when you move, you shrink. Let me tie you to the branch so you don't curl. Pleased to prove his greatness, Onini agreed. Anansi tied the python, head, middle, tail, all along the branch with strong vines. When Onini realized he was bound tight, he roared, "Anansi, you tricked me!" Anansi only laughed, hoisting the branch over his shoulder. "A deal's a deal." He carried the bound python all the way to Nyame's palace. The sky god's eyes flashed with amusement. "You have caught one, 2 remain." Anansi returned home, panting but grinning. Aso met him at the door. "The leopard next," she said. "Osibo hunts in the tall grass. He is cunning but vain." "Then he shall trap himself," said Anansi. He dug a deep pit in the path Osibo always took and covered it with leaves. At dawn, the leopard came prowling, tail swishing. The ground gave way, and thud, he fell. Hours later, Anansi arrived with a small vine and a smug smile. "Osibo, my friend, what brings you down there?" Osibo growled, "Get me out of this hole, trickster, and I'll spare your life." "Of course, my friend. I'll tie this vine to a tree so you can climb." He tied it carefully, but when Osibo grasped it, the vine snapped tight around his legs. Before the leopard could roar, Anansi pulled the rope, hoisting him upside down like a sack of yams. "Forgive me, Osibo," Anansi said cheerfully, "but you are my ticket to the sky." And once more, he climbed his silken thread, carrying the furious leopard through the clouds. Nyame clapped his mighty hands. "Impressive. 2 of my creatures, but the hardest remains, the invisible fairy." Anansi bowed again. "I'll bring her too." Now, the Muetia were small forest fairies, invisible unless they chose to be seen. They loved sweet things and mischief. Aso whispered her plan. "We shall use gum. Make a figure from it, a sticky doll, and coat it with palm wine." Anansi nodded eagerly. The gum doll. Brilliant! They shaped the doll and dressed it in leaves, placing it beside the path where the fairies danced. Anansi hid nearby and began to sing softly. "Fairy, fairy, come play with me. Drink sweet palm wine and dance so free." The song carried through the trees. Soon the air shimmered, and from nowhere appeared a tiny figure glowing faintly, the invisible fairy herself. She eyed the gum doll suspiciously. "Who are you, stranger?" The doll said nothing. The fairy frowned. "You are rude not to greet me." Still no answer. The fairy's wings twitched. "You won't speak? Fine, then." And she slapped the doll, but her hand stuck fast. "What trick is this?" she cried, pulling, and only stuck faster. Furious, she kicked, and her foot stuck too. She wriggled and flailed until the gum doll held her tight. Anansi stepped back from hiding, grinning. "A pleasure to meet you, little fairy." He wrapped her in a calabash and climbed again toward Nyame's palace. The sky god watched as Anansi laid down his trophies, the python, the leopard, and the captured fairy. The heavens trembled with laughter. "Anansi," said Nyame, "no mortal or god has ever done what you have done. You have captured my creatures with wit alone. The stories are yours." He lifted the golden chest from beside his throne and placed it before Anansi. "From this day forth, the tales of wisdom, of trickery, of gods and men shall belong to you, and through you to humankind." Anansi bowed deeply. May the world never stop telling them. As Anansi descended from the sky, his chest of stories shimmered like a sunrise. The clouds parted, the winds carried whispers, beginnings of tales yet untold. Down below, the people gathered. Children pointed, elders squinted at the strange light in the sky. Anansi landed in the clearing and opened the chest. Out flew the stories, swirling, shimmering like birds freed from cages. They scattered across the world, each landing in a heart, a mind, a tongue. The first storyteller began to speak, and the world filled with words. As time passed, people gathered around fires to retell what Anansi had brought. Stories of heroes, tricksters, gods, and fools, each a reflection of life itself. Anansi basked in fame. Whenever tales were told, his name lived on. Yet the sky god's laughter still echoed faintly in the wind, because Nyame knew stories are tricky things. They belong to no one for long. Years later, when every village knew his name, Anansi grew proud. He strutted through the market boasting, "Every story belongs to me. Without me, you would have no tales at all." Children giggled. The elders smiled but said nothing. Only Aso frowned. "Husband, pride makes even the spider fall." Anansi waved her off. "Fall? Never! I am the greatest storyteller in the world." He decided to gather all stories back, to keep them safe, he said, but truly to own them again. He wove a giant gourd, hollow and shining, and began stuffing stories inside, every tale he heard, every whisper of wisdom. He filled the gourd until it overflowed, stories of love, of monsters, of gods who walked as men, and when it was full, he tied it with vine and said, "Now I'll hide it high where no one can reach." He tied the gourd to his belly and began to climb a tall tree. But it was awkward. The gourd swung and bumped, knocking him back with each step. Aso watched below, shaking her head. "Why not tie it to your back, husband? You'd climb easier." Anansi glared down. "You think you're cleverer than me?" She only smiled. He kept climbing, but the gourd swung harder and harder until it slipped. Crash! The gourd broke open and stories spilled out, fluttering through the air, landing in every corner of the world. Children laughed as tales drifted into their homes. Elders caught them in their hearts and began to tell new ones. Anansi groaned from the ground. "All my stories gone." Aso laughed softly. "Not gone, my dear, shared." Anansi sighed. "I suppose the world cannot live without stories, or without a clever wife." From that day on, Anansi learned, though briefly, that wisdom is not to be hoarded. Stories grow when they are told, each mouth adding flavor, each ear changing shape. He continued to boast, of course, he was Anansi, but deep down he knew a story untold is a web unspun. On quiet nights, when the moon glows silver and the wind hums through the trees, you can still hear the whisper of Anansi's web. Each thread glistens with a story, old or new, true or almost true. Children say if you listen closely, you can hear him chuckling, dangling above you, whispering, "A story is a web, and I, Anansi, spin them all." Far above, Nyame, the sky god, sits upon his throne of clouds, watching the world below. He hears laughter from firesides, songs from storytellers, and cries of heroes reborn in words. He smiles. "Let them speak," he says to the winds. "Let them weave." Because even gods need stories, and even tricksters serve their purpose. One evening, as Anansi wandered the forest, he met a young boy crying beside the path. "What's wrong, child?" asked the spider. "I have no story to tell tonight," said the boy. "The elders will laugh at me." Anansi smiled. "Then listen well." He leaned close and whispered a tale, short, bright, and alive. When the boy reached the village, he retold it. The people laughed and clapped. The story spread like fire, and the boy forgot who told it first. From a nearby branch, Anansi chuckled softly. Another one well woven. And so it was, the greatest trick of all, a story that belonged to everyone. Over time, Anansi's stories traveled beyond forests and villages, across rivers and oceans. They became folk tales in new tongues, myths in new lands. His name shifted from Kweku Anansi to Aunt Nancy, from trickster to hero, from Ghana to the Caribbean to the Americas. But no matter where they went, one truth remained. Whenever someone tells a tale of cleverness, of laughter, of survival, somewhere unseen, Anansi smiles. His web trembles softly as if in applause. And thus, the world that once had no stories became full of them because one small spider dared to climb the sky. He didn't do it with strength or wealth or magic, only wit, patience, and a touch of mischief. The stories we tell of love, fear, greed, and hope are all threads in his web. And if you ever wondered where your story began, look to the stars. Somewhere up there in the space between cloud and sky, Anansi still weaves. His 8 legs dance, his laughter echoes, and his stories, now ours, never end. Did you enjoy the story? I really hope you did. Stay tuned for more stories on Storyplanet. Until next time, be good and stay well.